He always said he was straight, but one night on the field, he asked me, should we try this? He used to call me, Art Boy, like it was a slur. But that night, under the floodlights, his voice cracked when he whispered, do you ever think about us? I didn't know what was worse, how much I had thought about it, or how much I wanted to believe he finally had too. Senior year was supposed to be simple. Keep my head down, draw quietly, survive PE, graduate. That was the plan until Luke Jameson decided I was interesting. Luke was the school's golden boy. Quarterback. Prom king before the ballots were even printed. The kind of guy who could ruin you with a look, then have girls lining up to thank him for it. He walked through the halls like he owned them, trailed by teammates, girlfriends, and the kind of invisible shield that comes from being straight, white, and worshipped. Me? I was none of those things. I was Eli Vargas. I liked boys. I liked drawing boys. And I liked drawing Luke Jameson way more than was healthy. Not that he knew that. Not at first. It started in October, after practice. I was waiting for my brother to finish weight training, sketchbook open, lost in a charcoal mess of shoulder blades and back muscles. I didn't even realize who I was drawing until a shadow blocked the light, and a familiar voice said, is that supposed to be me? I froze. I looked down. It was unmistakably him. The broad stance. The tilted helmet. The cocky curve of a mouth I knew too well from years of pretending not to look. He was staring at the drawing. Then at me. You stalking me, Vargas? I wanted to die. Melt into the bleachers and become part of the concrete. But instead, I said, do you even know how many people I sketch? You're not that special. He raised an eyebrow. You literally shaded my dimples. Damn. I slammed the sketchbook shut and stood. Whatever. Forget it. I expected him to laugh, to make some crude comment, to shove me, maybe. But he just looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Then he said, you're good. Like really good. I didn't trust it. Luke Jameson didn't compliment people like me. Not unless there was a punchline. But nothing came. Just a weird silence. And then, the next day, he sat next to me in the cafeteria. Whatcha drawing today? He asked, mouth full of fries. I stared at him. Why are you talking to me? He shrugged. Maybe I'm expanding my social circle. Maybe you lost a bet. He grinned. Touché. The thing wash kept coming back. Practice ended, and he found me by the bleachers. Lunch came, and he brought me an extra cookie. One night, he even asked if I could help him with his English paper. I waited for the other shoe to drop. It didn't. Instead, things got complicated. He started texting me. At first it was about homework. Then it was about movies. Then memes. Then 2 a.m. questions like do you think people are born gay, or do they just choose? I didn't answer that one. A week later, he asked if I wanted to come to one of his games. I'll leave your name at the gate, he said casually, like this was a normal thing we did now. I went. And I hated myself for it. Because somewhere between the huddles and touchdowns, I realized I wasn't just sketching Luke anymore. I was falling for him. Hard. And that was a problem. Because Luke Jameson was straight. Said it all the time. Boasted about his conquests. Talked about girls like they were trophies. But then came that night. The night that rewrote everything. It was cold, early December. I was alone on the bleachers, sketching the goalposts while waiting for my brother again. Practice had ended, but someone was still out there running drills in the dark. It was him. Luke, in just a sleeveless tee, breath fogging in the air, cleats kicking up damp grass as he ran suicide sprints. When he finally noticed me, he jogged over, red-faced and panting. You always just sit here drawing. Sometimes, I said, not sure where this was going. Of me? I didn't answer. He sat beside me, too close. I think about it, you know, he said suddenly. I blinked. About what? He looked down at his hands. What it'd be like. With a guy. Silence. I thought I'd misheard him. He laughed softly, bitter. Everyone thinks I'm so sure of who I am. But sometimes I look at you and I don't know. You seem surreal. I was shaking. Not from the cold. He turned to me. Do you ever think about us? That was when he said it. Quiet. Barely audible over the distant hum of stadium lights. Should we try this? He didn't touch me. He didn't lean in. He just waited. And I didn't know what to say. Because yes, I'd imagined it 1,000 times. But never like this. Never with him looking so scared, like maybe I was the one who could hurt him. I closed the sketchbook. I met his eyes. And I said, Luke, I don't want to be your experiment. His face broke. But I wasn't finished. Because if I say yes, and then you change your mind, I'm the one who ends up broken. Not you. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. I get it. And he walked away. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. The days after that were excruciating. Luke stopped sitting with me at lunch. The text stopped. The lingering glances in the hallway, the subtle smiles after practice all gone, like they'd never existed. And I knew it was coming. I knew. But that didn't make it hurt any less. What I didn't expect was how loud the silence would be. He didn't out me. He didn't laugh about it in the locker room or tell his friends I'd come on to him. No, he just disappeared. Like a chapter one hadn't meant to write in my own story. I started avoiding the field. I stopped sketching faces that looked too much like his. When I walked past him in the hallway, I kept my eyes forward. I refused to be the sad gay cliché, mooning over the straight boy who got scared of his feelings. Except I was. One Thursday, 2 weeks after that night, I came home to find my mom in the kitchen, holding my sketchbook. Is this him? She asked gently, turning it to show me the portrait I'd forgotten I'd even drawn. Luke, asleep on the bleachers, helmet off, hair mussed, a small smile playing on his lips. I froze. Why are you going through my stuff? Her eyes softened. It fell out of your bag. I was picking up laundry. I didn't respond. She closed the book and put it down. Whoever he is, Eli, if he made you look at him like that, he must matter. I stared at her. Mothers always know, even when you haven't told them. I don't think he wants to matter anymore, I whispered. She just walked over and hugged me. Then he's not ready. But don't let his fear make you feel small. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Winter break came and went. I didn't see him. Didn't try to see him. But the second week of January, I heard from him again in the least expected way. A knock on the art room door. Someone's asking for you, Mr. Kim, our art teacher, said. He says it's urgent. I frowned, wiping clay from my hands. Who? But I didn't need to ask. I already knew. Luke was waiting outside. Hoodie up, eyes hidden under his hat, backpack slung over one shoulder like he was ready to bolt. He looked like hell. What do you want? I asked, trying to sound composed, arms crossed. He shoved his hands into his pockets. Can we talk? I sighed. Why? Because I miss you. That was low. Too low. Luke, I said quietly, you can't miss someone you didn't really have. He flinched. I know. I screwed up. I don't know what I'm doing, okay? That much is obvious. He ran a hand through his hair. Do you think it's easy? Feeling like this? Not being able to name it. I bit the inside of my cheek. Do you think this is easy? I shot back. Getting crumbs of attention like I'm supposed to be grateful. Watching you act like I don't exist just because your friends are around. He didn't say anything. I turned to walk away. I told my mom, he said suddenly. I stopped. What? He swallowed. About you. About me. About everything. I stared at him, heartbeat loud in my ears. She said she always knew, he added with a small, bitter smile. Moms, right? I took a cautious step closer. Why are you telling me this now? He met my eyes. Because I don't want to be afraid anymore. We stood there in the quiet hallway for what felt like years. Then I asked the one question I'd been too scared to ask before. Are you saying you're gay? He shook his head slowly. I don't know. Maybe I'm bi. Maybe I'm just Luke. All I know is I want to be near you. I feel more like me when I am. That was the moment I realized something important. He wasn't looking for a label. He was looking for a home. And somehow, I'd become that. We didn't start dating right away. We tried to be friends again first. He'd come over to my house to study and end up doodling on the edges of my homework. I'd go to his games, but sit in the back rows. At night, we'd text until 3 a.m. about things we'd never say out loud in school: fear, attraction, jealousy, and the dream of leaving town someday together. Sometimes he'd hold my hand under the table at Denny's. Once, he kissed me on the cheek behind the library. But still didn't tell anyone. It was like we were dating in parentheses. One night in late February, I finally asked him, how long are we going to keep hiding? He looked genuinely torn. I'm not ready for the fallout. I nodded. Okay. But I'm not going back into the closet so you can figure yourself out. He looked down. I get that. Then he looked up. And said something I didn't expect. Then I'll do it. What? I'll tell them. The team. Everyone. I'm tired of pretending. I shook my head. You don't have to. I want to. He took a deep breath. I want you. And I want the world to know. He came out the next day. In the locker room. To the team. No preamble. No panic. Just Luke Jameson, standing there with his heart on his sleeve, saying, I'm bi. I'm dating Eli. And if that's a problem, say it to my face. Some of them laughed nervously. Some didn't react at all. But most of them. They nodded. One guy even said, took you long enough. Turns out, people aren't always the villains we expect them to be. The news spread fast. By the end of the day, half the school knew. By the end of the week, the entire town. There were some ugly stares. Some whispered slurs. But there were also handshakes. High fives. A teacher who pulled me aside and said, thank you for being brave. And Luke walked through all of it like he was finally breathing air for the first time. We kissed in public for the first time outside the gym after a game. It wasn't dramatic. Just honest. And a little awkward. But perfect. A month later, we sat together on the hill behind the school, watching the stars after our last home game. He turned to me and whispered, I meant it, you know. When I said I wanted to try this. I know, I said, resting my head on his shoulder. I think I love you. I smiled. I think I love you too. Spring came slowly to our corner of North Carolina. The magnolias bloomed, and with them, so did everything between me and Luke. We started walking into school together. Holding hands. Sometimes, he'd steal my sketchbook during lunch and scribble the dumbest cartoons on the margins. Once, he drew a really awful version of me with hearts for eyes, staring at him like he was the sun. I didn't erase it. People stared. Some laughed. But no one messed with us because Luke had this energy, this gravity, that made it clear he wouldn't tolerate it. And somewhere along the line, I realized I didn't feel scared anymore. Not of the way I loved. Not of the way he was learning to love me back. But it wasn't all perfect. His dad didn't take it well. We were in the middle of a late-night call when I heard the door slam through the phone, followed by raised voices. "Who is he, Luke? Who is this boy I saw you with? Don't you lie to me." I waited, heart frozen, ears pressed to the silence between each sharp breath. Luke didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. And when the yelling turned into something closer to heartbreak, he told me, very quietly, "I need to go." I didn't sleep that night. The next day at school, he showed up with a bruise on his cheek and an empty look in his eyes. I rushed to him in the hallway, but he just shook his head. "Don't make a scene," he whispered. We hid in the janitor's closet. He slid down the wall, cradling his head in his hands. "I think I broke something," he said. "No," I said, sitting beside him. "You refuse to keep something broken." He didn't cry. But I did. Luke moved in with his aunt that weekend. Said it was just, until things cooled down. But when he looked at me across the lunch table on Monday, his eyes were different. Harder. Older. "He said I embarrassed the family," Luke murmured. "And you didn't?" I said, trying to joke, trying to lift it. He didn't laugh. Instead, he reached across the table and took my hand. "I'd do it again. For you." Prom season hit like a slap to the face. I had no intention of going. I'd already planned to skip it, binge-watch horror movies, and maybe eat a whole cheesecake in my pajamas. But Luke had other plans. "You're going with me," he said, tossing a folded Tux rental brochure onto my desk. "Are you serious?" He grinned. "You think I went through all this just to slow dance with some girl in a dress I don't care about?" He was serious. And when prom night came, he showed up at my door with a tie that didn't match his jacket and a single sunflower in his hand. Not a rose. Not something cliché. A sunflower, bright, awkward, a little too large for the boutonniere pin but still perfect. My mom cried. We danced. We laughed. And when the DJ played some cheesy 80s love ballad, he pulled me into the center of the room and kissed me right in front of everyone. There were gasps. Some camera flashes. A few groans from the football table. But I swear when he kissed me, it felt like the whole room disappeared. College decisions rolled in like waves after a storm. I got into RSD. Luke got into Chapel Hill on a partial sports scholarship. We sat under the bleachers the night we got our final letters. He held his in one hand. I held mine in the other. Different coasts, he said. Different lives, I whispered. He looked up at me, eyes wide and vulnerable. Are we still us? I didn't have an answer. So I told him the truth. I don't want to be the reason you don't chase your dream. And I won't let you be the reason I don't chase mine. He nodded. But if you're still mine by the end of it, if we survive all the miles and months and everything in between, then yeah, I think we'll be okay. He took my hand. Then let's survive it. The night before graduation, we snuck out to the field one last time. No football pads. No crowds. Just us, lying on the 50-yard line, looking up at a sky too big to hold all our questions. Do you think this is love? Luke asked, voice thick with the fear of goodbye. I think it's something bigger, I said. He rolled onto his side, looked at me like I was the only thing that made sense in his world. I never thought I'd fall for a guy. Especially not one who draws me like I'm worth remembering. I smiled. You are. We kissed one last time under the stars. In August, we moved into separate dorms, different cities, separate lives. The texts slowed. The calls came only once a week. But the love didn't vanish. Not really. Because somewhere in the space between us, there was still that field. That moment. That question. Should we try this? We already had. And we were still trying. Every damn day. Long-distance love isn't like in the movies. It's messy. It's quiet. It's too many missed calls and too many nights wondering if the other person is changing faster than you can keep up. Luke and I tried. We really did. At first, it was all late-night FaceTimes and countdowns to semester breaks. I'd sit in my tiny dorm at RSD, surrounded by sketchbooks and charcoal dust, and he'd be sprawled in his Chapel Hill apartment, physics notes scattered across the floor, eyes on me like I was the only thing keeping him sane. We made promises. So many promises. But promises bend under pressure. Sophomore year was the turning point. I could feel him slipping. The texts became shorter. He started replying with just LOL or that's wild instead of full paragraphs. When I asked if everything was okay, he said, just tired. I knew what that meant. I wasn't stupid. But I didn't confront him, not right away. I held on, because it was easier to believe in the version of us from high school than to accept the quiet reality. We were growing in opposite directions. Then one night in February, he missed our call for the third time in a week. I texted, still on tonight? No response. At 2 a.m., I called him. He answered, voice groggy. Eli, can we not do this now? Something inside me cracked. Do what? This. The guilt trip. I'm exhausted. I sat there, holding the phone like it was a lifeline. I'm not asking you to stay on the line forever, Luke. I'm just asking you to show up. Silence. Then, quietly, maybe we need a break. I waited for the panic. The heartbreak. The cliché sobbing. But what came instead was a numb kind of clarity. Maybe we did. We didn't call it a breakup. We just stopped trying. It wasn't dramatic. There were no accusations. No slammed doors. Just two boys who once lit up in each other's orbit, now moving on different axes. I buried myself in art. I started painting again, huge canvases, brutal colors, abstract explosions of anger and loneliness and yearning. My professors noticed. One of them told me my pain had texture now. That was the weirdest compliment I'd ever gotten. Luke drifted to the background of my life, like a song I used to play on repeat but now only hear faintly in passing. But I never forgot him. Never stopped loving him. Even when it hurt. 3 years passed. I graduated with honors. Got into a graduate program in New York. Held my first gallery show. People stood in front of my painting titled The 50-Yard Line and whispered about the emotion, the longing, the love trapped in brushstrokes. No one knew what it meant. But I did. One night after the show, I walked out into the city air and found a text on my phone. Luke Jameson, hey. I saw a photo of your painting. I knew it was the field before I even read the title. My heart stopped. I hadn't heard from him in over a year. I wasn't sure you'd recognize it. A pause. Then, I never forgot. He was living in Atlanta now. Working for a community nonprofit, coaching high school football on weekends. Not playing anymore, his shoulder had given out sophomore year. But he said he'd found something better, helping kids who didn't think they had a future learn how to dream again. He asked if I wanted to meet. I said yes. We chose a cafe halfway between us, in a sleepy Carolina town neither of us had ever been to. A neutral place. A blank page. When I walked in, he was already there. Waiting by the window. Same eyes. Same crooked smile. A little older. A little more worn. I froze in the doorway. He stood slowly. And then just like that we were face to face again. I didn't think you'd come, he said. I wasn't sure I should. He laughed softly. Yeah. Me neither. We sat. It was awkward at first. There were too many memories between us. Too many things left unsaid. He ordered black coffee. I ordered tea. Our hands kept brushing the table like they were trying to remember how to reach across it. Then he said, I saw the other paintings too. Which ones? The ones with the cracked helmets. The bleeding fields. The guy with his back turned. I looked down. I wasn't very subtle. No, he said gently. But you were honest. I met his eyes. Why now, Luke? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, because I couldn't keep pretending that the best thing I ever had was something I was supposed to outgrow. I didn't speak. I couldn't. He leaned forward. I never stopped loving you, Eli. Not for 1 second. I closed my eyes. I wanted to hate you. I know. I wanted to forget. I know. But I didn't. I'm glad. Silence. Then, in the smallest voice I'd used in years, I asked. Do you still want to try this? He smiled. Not the cocky grin from high school. Not the scared smile from the night under the lights. But something new. Something real. I do. This time, we started over. Slowly. We didn't rush into things. We visited each other once a month. Talked on the phone twice a week. No pressure. No labels. Just two people learning how to love again with full knowledge of how badly it can hurt. It wasn't perfect. But it was honest. And that made all the difference. 1 year later, I moved to Atlanta. Got a studio apartment near his coaching center. He helped me hang my paintings on the walls. I helped him fix his fridge when it broke. He still couldn't cook. I still snored. But one morning, while we were brushing our teeth, he looked at me in the mirror and said, I never thought I'd end up here. With you. Happy. And I spat toothpaste all over the sink because I was laughing too hard. He kissed my forehead and whispered, let's keep trying this. Every day. And we did. Years later, at a small gallery in Atlanta, I unveiled a new piece. It was quiet. Gentle. Two silhouettes standing beneath stadium lights. One of them had his hand just barely lifted reaching, asking, hoping. The plaque beneath it read. He always said he was straight but one night on the field, he asked me, should we try this? And next to me, holding my hand as we watched strangers stare at the painting, was Luke. Still mine. Still trying. Still everything.